In 1983, Atari released an arcade game designed after the original Star Wars, Episode 4 movie. This game, simply titled Star Wars, took you through some of the final scenes of the movie, where Luke flew an X-Wing along the surface and through the trenches of the Death Star to blow it up. This arcade game was very impressive for its time, using sharp vector graphics, digitized voices, and the familiar Star Wars themes that were still fresh in everyone's mind, seeing that this game was released the same year as Return of the Jedi. It was a popular game, so it's no surprise that Lucasfilm wanted to get the game out to as many platforms as possible, with early releases for Atari consoles along with the C64 in 1983 and 84, and more advanced home computer versions by Broderbund in 1988 and 89. The original Mac never really got a lot of official arcade game conversions or ports. However, the Star Wars Arcade is an exception. This was released for Mac in 1988 and was actually very faithful to the arcade version, and even included the digitized voice samples seen in the actual arcade game.
Good 5 standing by.
However, like I said, it wasn't released until the late 80s, so if you didn't have access to the arcade or own an Atari or C64, you were out of luck if you wanted to play that. That was until 1985, when a software company, Miles Computing, published a clone of sorts called MacWars, written by Tim Hayes. Miles Computing published several games for home computers in the mid to late 80s. We've covered their game Fusillade here on Classic Mac Games back in 2011, but I think the most well-known game they published would be A Fool's Errand by Cliff Johnson. MacWars seems to be highly inspired by the Star Wars arcade. There isn't a lot known about this game, mostly because the game uses some pretty effective copy protection that, to this day, has still not been cracked. This means you can't download a working version of this game on any of the regular Macintosh abandonware sites. The most I've seen of this game before making this video was an old, low-quality, sideways video with a couple of foul-mouthed kids play it on YouTube. It's also a pretty hard game to come by, though a few years back I think someone got a hold of some new old stock, as a few of these sealed boxes showed up on eBay. I was lucky enough to grab one, and because of the currently uncracked copy protection, there isn't really another way to play this game. So I suppose, let's open this bad boy up. We're dealing with a piece of history here, something that I'll probably never have the pleasure of opening again. So let's be really careful with this. Got my precision fork? So here we go. There's really an indescribable feeling that comes with opening something this old. Good that I'm doing it on camera though, so we can all experience this together. Crazy to think that this thing was sealed up over some 34 years ago. Man, I really hope this was stored away safely and nothing is damaged inside. Time capsule. So off with this thick plastic. The game comes as sort of a slipcase style box. Immediately inside the box, we're greeted with the manual, which features the MacWars logo, and a rather paper airplane looking ship sitting in the corner of a 3D room. Next, we have a registration card. Boring. Ooh, and here we go. The disc itself. Uh-oh. I'm hoping this is just glue on the label degrading. I gave it a sniff and I didn't smell any mold or mildew. I'm allergic to mold and pretty sensitive to it, so I'm fairly sure it's the glue. Anyways, back to that manual. It's a really neat fold-out manual. It gives a story of the game, the controls, and it really does a good job explaining what this game is all about. It's also got this interesting pop-up book style artwork of ships, probably to emphasize the 3D aspect of the game. I only have 2 games by Miles Computing, but their other game, Fusillade, also has an interesting and pretty creative manual as well. Now onto the disc. First and foremost, we need to make a copy of this disc. There's no way I'd jam this disc into my Mac straight away and try playing this thing. Long ago, I used to play originals, but then it hit me that I might never see another copy of these games ever again at this point, so I don't want to risk damaging it. I found the Mac version of the Copy 2 software a must-have utility, especially if you deal with original copies of games. These things are getting old, so it's always best to play from a backup. Why I like Copy 2 so much is because these guys really knew what they were doing when they created this software. It allows you to make backup copies of software that's even got copy protection. This software has never let me down when it comes to making a backup disk, so I'm hoping today is no different. So for this disk, we're going to choose sector copy with format. On my first try to duplicate this disk, I used bit copy, which is what you're usually supposed to use if the game has copy protection. According to the program, it makes very few assumptions about the format of the original disk. So I tried it out and the game actually knew that I was using a backup copy, and it just restarts the Mac after the title screen. That sucks. Damn. But yes, sector copy did indeed work, and we now have a beautiful backup. Label me happy. So now, let's check out the game. After booting the game up, you're greeted with a neat 3D shot of the MacWars logo coming together along with some digitized audio announcing their game.
From the makers of Harrier Strike Mission and Mac Attack, Miles Computing presents MacWars.
After selecting your difficulty, you start out in a spaceport corridor, and you have to make your way to the ship and get on board. This is a 3D game, and this section is first person, and seeing how this actually runs on such an old computer is really impressive in my opinion. This part probably isn't needed, but it's still fun to screw around in here a little bit before you start the game.
Prepare for space assault.
After a bit of loading, the game kind of throws you into the action. It's not bad though, there's only a few enemies on the first screen, and they're all spread out pretty far. It's a pretty good pace to learn the controls for the game, because in the next few waves it gets a little harder. You probably immediately noticed the garbled mess on the bottom of the screen. It's not supposed to be like that. My copy is indeed damaged. I tried both the copy I made and the original, and they're both like that. So kind of annoying, but I'm just glad the game works. After battling and navigating through the first section, you'll approach the enemy starbase. Shooting the starbase has no effect, as your spacecraft will automatically home in on the starbase's northern surface defense system. Now that we're on the starbase, this is where the real action starts, where you'll battle waves of enemy attackers. So on Novice, there are 5 waves of enemies to get through, 10 waves on Advanced, and 15 on Expert. These waves are pretty simple. Avoid the enemy shots, which are marked by big X's, and shoot down the ships by lining up your target and clicking the mouse. Your shields are shown at the bottom left of the screen, and they go down as you get hit, so you gotta dodge the enemy shots and other obstacles. At the end of each wave, there's an iris that you're supposed to fly through. You don't have to, but by actually getting through it, you're awarded 75 points and an extra shield. It's hard to navigate in this game, or at least I'm pretty bad at it, so it actually is a challenge to fly through the iris. You get different amounts of points for destroying different enemy objects. The manual shows a good representation of each object. Honestly though, you'll probably not focus too much on this. All you need to know is that you want to blow everything up. After all 5 waves,
Get ready to enter tunnel.
in this part, you navigate into the trench of the starbase. Something kind of like what that guy, Luke Skyman did. Walker Skyman. Doing this part isn't easy though, because of the controls, which I will talk about in a minute. So inside the tunnels is this neat shaft. You've got to dodge up and down, left and right, to get through this area without hitting these power barriers. It's not a long area, honestly, could have been a bit longer in my opinion. This next area has moving power barriers. You've got to make it all the way down to the other side of this area and through the next tunnel. And finally, We're here at the main power generator. We're all clear. Now let's blow this thing and go home. But to get out of here, we do need to fly through this next tunnel and avoid these other power barriers to get out of here. And that's that. We destroyed the enemy space station.
Congratulations, you have destroyed the enemy space station.
After this, the game just starts over and you do it all again for more points. I'm actually surprised that I got through this game on my first couple runs. Like I was saying about the controls earlier, they're terrible. Turning is too sensitive, and unless you've got a completely spotless clean mouse ball area, you're gonna have problems flying the ship. I totally get now why those kids on YouTube had such bad attitudes. Graphically, the wireframe look of this game is pretty interesting. It's not on the same level of the arcade, with its vector graphics and way smoother gameplay. It's good though, and easy enough to understand what's happening on screen. It's not the easiest job to pick out the different types of enemies, especially with the wireframe graphics, but like I said, it doesn't really matter, because you'll just blow up everything you can anyways. The sound is where this game is completely rotten. Nasty sound. They had some wonderful digitized voice samples at the beginning of the game, but I just don't understand why they thought it would be a good idea to put that constant, migraine-inducing, grinding buzz throughout the gameplay. Jeez, Miles Computing, this is so freaking loud. Oh god, it's awful. You can lower the volume of the game while you're playing with the first few number keys, but it's still really annoying. A total waste of a sound channel. As far as compatibility, this game was released before the Macintosh Plus was even out. While I'm not shocked that it works on my Mac SE, I would be surprised if it runs on anything beyond that. This game boots up from really old system software, and anything newer than the SE can't boot it, at least to my knowledge. So this game is for the earliest of Macs only. So overall, this is definitely an interesting game from early Macintosh history. A lot of the earliest games would take over the entire computer, playing full screen, and not try to incorporate the Macintosh user interface, like the menu bar and such, that Apple would push so hard back then. These games that ran full screen and expected you to boot from a floppy were always my favorite. These types of games usually ran better too, because they wouldn't give CPU time to anything else that was running on the computer. Everything was focused on the game. It's super awesome to finally play this game firsthand. I'm overall impressed with the 3D graphics in this game. I wouldn't have thought it would be achievable on such old Mac hardware, with the frame rate it has anyways. I've had this in my collection for a few years now and really wanted to give it a shot, so I'm glad we could do this unboxing together. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more classic Mac games, make sure to leave a like on this video. Share it with anyone who you might think would be interested in this kind of stuff. Vintage Mac content has always been a rather niche topic here on YouTube, so let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.